Thank you all for coming on behalf of UCLA Anderson and the Center for Media, Entertainment, and Sports. I'm Eric Johnson, and it's a pleasure to be here. This is a very distinctive honor for me today and for us as a center with the opportunity to extend and honor our 2023 Gamechanger Award. Our recipient is the chairman of Universal Film and Entertainment Group. She has been in that position along with Universal Pictures for over a decade. She's the first British female studio executive running those studios. And during her tutelage, she has been an exceptional leader. I think it's very fitting coming out of a discussion of IP versus franchise in terms of the leadership that she's brought to that company in building out these franchises in a sea of IP. Whether it's taking Fast and Furious and extending that into multi-generational support, launching things like Despicable Me, the Bourne franchise, certainly a lot of success and a lot of opportunity that created opportunity for the rest of the company outside of the division. Within that, she's also been very much a leader in terms of making sure there was diversity in storytelling and voices and access and opportunities. The trend we see now of so many more filmmakers who are able to tell their story was led by our honoree in many ways. And her work with Vital Voices and work as a mentor for female executives in this industry has been second to none. So while the success that she's had has been amazing, the impact on our current culture has been there. She is definitely someone who has set the trend for this to be something that will resonate for decades upon decades and has changed the industry. So with that, I have the distinct honor of giving our 2023 Gamechanger Award to Dame Donna Langley, DBE. And because of the size and scope, our small award is being replaced by a bigger award that will come through at some point, like a Farrell's ice cream parlor.
This is amazing. Wow, this is pretty heavy. Should I take that? Well, Eric, thank you so much for that lovely introduction. You should write my bio. And Jay, thank you so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here with all of you today. And so thank you for having me. And just a thank you to Dean Bernardo also for this. I'm really excited to be here. I'm so interested in this school and what you all are doing. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation. And so I think we should just kind of get on with it, right? Like you don't need to hear a whole thing from me. I do expect the actual award to come kind of crashing through the wall or like somebody rappelling down. Like I'm expecting a stuntacular, Eric, okay? No. You can. There's some stunties backstage. We'll get you all rigged up. All right, should we do it? Okay, good. Here. Here.
All right. Is this thing on? Yes, it is. Okay. So first of all, I can't tell you what a privilege and an honor it is to be sitting with you. You have been such an inspiration in your role. You have been such a source of support for so many other leaders and creators. And I think, if in some small way we can add a little bit of shine, it's just a pleasure to be able to do that. So congratulations.
Thank you so much. Thanks, and thanks for having me.
Now, I have to say, though, that I'm not the only person that wanted to congratulate you. So I'm going to ask you to look up at this monitor because we had somebody who wanted to say a few words to you. It turns out there's a past Gamechanger recipient that heard that you were getting the award.
Hey there, Donna. Welcome to the club. Congratulations on winning the 2023 UCLA Anderson Gamechanger Award. Hey, I'm in good company now. You're one of the most fearless executives in Hollywood, and I know this. You definitely have done everything to make sure artists like myself get a chance to tell their stories on screen. and we appreciate you. You know what I mean? You're definitely a member of NWA after the work you let us do was Straight Outta Compton. You helped us make that a great picture, and you help a lot of filmmakers bring their vision to the screen. That's why you deserve this award. We need more people like you in the industry to help filmmakers from all walks of life tell their story on the big screen at a prestigious studio like Universal. I've always felt like you've been an adversary for me in my career, and I know you're going to go on to help many, many others achieve their dreams. So congratulations. Welcome to the club. And hey, I'll see you on top. Yay, yay.
Oh my God, I love him.
Good. Sounds like he loves you too. That's great. That's great. So, it's funny because when I think about where we are right now with the entertainment industry, and in my intro, I talked about how we're kind of in the early stages of the next wave of the entertainment experience. And you heard the panel before talking about franchises and so on. There's so many reasons to be optimistic. And one of them is that we have these kind of hit franchises that have been springing up everywhere, but you've had a few. I just was curious as to whether or not there was a particular project, upcoming film, ongoing franchise that has you excited.
Well, I couldn't be here today without talking about Super Mario Brothers.
Let's get on that.
Which we opened globally last weekend it broke records. The highest grossing opening for a video game adaptation. Like the 11th number one opening for Illumination, on and on and on. And we just crossed the $500 million mark at the global box office today. So we're very proud at the moment of what we've done in the animation space. So at Universal, we own DreamWorks Animation and Illumination. And we've always said that we were two of the top 4 animation studios, so including Disney and Pixar. And we're used to being, trailing in the wake of Disney with Marvel and all of their great Star Wars IP that you just heard about. But we've kind of overtaken them in animation. And, it's partly due to the pandemic. We doubled down on theatrical during the pandemic, really, and this is going to be a theme that I'll talk about, because we didn't have the opportunity to go straight to streaming. And so we had to figure out how to change our windowing system to make it, monetarily viable to release theatrically, whereas Disney were doubling down on their Disney Plus streaming platform. And so they were sending, in particular, all of their animated films, like Soul and Turning Red and, great movies direct to the consumer. And it sort of changed their consumer behavior, their fans' consumer behavior. Whereas, we released Minions last year and Puss in Boots at the end of the year. So we've actually come out on top over the last 3 years, and we're kind of kicking their ass a little bit. So it's actually kind of feels good.
It should feel good. And I'm looking forward to seeing the Mario movie and to trying the Mario ride.
Oh, well, yeah, you have to do that. It's great. Yeah, we'll hook you up, Jay.
Ooh, I like that. Okay, so I wanted to ask you a little bit about your career journey, but before that, since you brought up the pandemic, this is the Game Changer Award, and one of the things I think is really important to talk about is kind of decision making and finding ways to make an impact and to innovate and change what you do or what the organization does. But sometimes the change comes from outside. Can you talk a little bit about what that was like? Especially in those first 3 or 4 months when we didn't know how long the pandemic was going to last, and how do you kind of get a sense directionally of what you're trying to do and how you're going to address it?
Yeah, well, it really, just to think back on it, they were crazy times, right? We didn't know anything. And if you remember on that day, what was it, March 17th, 2020, we all left the office being told and thinking that it was going to be for 2 weeks. I didn't think it was going to be for 2 weeks. We had enough information coming from our China office. We were building a theme park in Beijing at the time. And so we just knew enough that this was going to be a much longer situation. And so very early on, we did two things that were I think, game changing. One not so much, but we were the first studio to pick up a major movie. We had Fast 9 coming into movie theaters, I think the summer of 2020. I picked it up and I moved it to 2021, and then we ultimately moved it again. There was an uproar. I mean, everybody said, what are you doing? Even my own team questioned whether we needed to do it. They thought I was being overreactive, and I just had the gut instinct to kind of protect that asset. The other thing that we did that has been truly monumental to our business model, and it changed the industry, is that we changed windows. So before the pandemic, the studios had been in this uneasy relationship with our exhibition partners, right? Because you couldn't see a movie at home. You go and see it in the movie theater, then you'd have to wait 90 days before you could get it in the first transactional window, and then you'd have to wait like another 240 days before it came onto your TV at home, if you weren't streaming. It just made absolutely no business sense, but the theater owners were dead set against that. So in March of 2020, we had our animated movie Trolls World Tour ready for release. We'd spent 90% of our marketing. We were in the hole. And so my fearless leader, Jeff Shell, the CEO of NBC Universal, said, here we go. Now's the time. So that weekend when, we were all at home stocking up on toilet paper and, dried goods, we were also figuring out how to break our windows, which we did, make a deal with exhibition so they participate with us in that early window, and we sent the movie into the home. And that additional revenue stream has actually been one of the big pillars of our financial success over the last 3 years.
And I remember that because I did watch Trolls World Tour, and it was outstanding.
A lot of people were texting me during that time saying, thank you. Our kids have just watched it for the 11th time.
Well, you can do worse than Mary J. and George Clinton, right?
There you go.
That was all right.
It was a great soundtrack.
So, this brings me to another question that I really think would be useful, particularly for our students. As a leader, you're not just managing stuff, you're leading other leaders. And what you just said about this kind of like in your gut, you had a feeling we needed to kind of change our approach, do these things. One, do you feel like there's something unique about your style that's different, say, than, other leaders that you've come across? And two, thinking about some of these recent challenges and opportunities, is there something that you try to kind of repeat? Is there a leadership style that you try to implement that impacts your culture?
Okay. Well, I've been doing this for a long time, so I've had the opportunity to work with different leaders and observe different leadership styles, and also different leadership styles in my industry and those of people in other industries and other sectors. And I actually think that's really important. Like I'm reading Rick Rubin's book at the moment, which is a fascinating look into creativity. It's less of a business book. It is more about the creative process, but it's fascinating. I love Bob Iger's book. So I like to be a student of leadership, actually. I've had the great benefit of good mentors, and I've also had, because I want to be positive about it, I had the benefit of a couple of leaders who were not great. And I learned things about their style that I did not want to do. And it made me start to kind of compile a playbook, if you will, earlier in my career about ways that things could be done differently. And some of the pillars of my leadership style are, I think, look, communication is everything. Kind of setting the tone and setting the goals is really important. Everybody kind of flourishes with that because, then they can take those forward, they can trickle down into the organization. And it doesn't matter if it's a big organization or a small one, everyone needs direction. I think accountability is also a big one. As a leader, if we have a movie that doesn't work, I will own it. I'll say, listen, we picked wrong. I picked wrong. They don't all work, and I'll take that responsibility with my bosses. And I think, again, that sort of trickles down. So, the byproduct of that is that you're working in in a productive environment, and it eliminates the fear factor. Some leaders like to kind of create, a fearful kind of environment and a competitive one. I like people to be competitive with themselves and with our competitors. I don't really like executives to be competitive with one another internally. I think it just causes too much mess. And then, something that I learned actually from one of my bosses early on was, don't confuse power. So don't confuse tough behavior with power, or don't confuse kind of fairness with weakness. And really, for me, what that comes down to is decency. You can be decent. You can create a decent working environment and culture where people are decent to each other. The way that we deal, with business dealings, we do it in a decent way. And I like that word because, again, it's not soft skills, it's not soft power, which has all kinds of connotations, some of them meaningful, but it's just be decent. It oftentimes things just boil down to very basic core values.
Yeah. I felt that. So the two things based on what you just said. First, can you talk a little bit more about your collaboration with creators, right? You just talked about the 2 animation studios, but I know that you've also worked directly with some of the most creative people in this town. How does that style that you just talked about translate to working with creatives?
Well, I always say that, working with creative people, and obviously they're not all created the same, they're very different, but I sort of start from the place that, I have enormous respect for anybody who creates anything. It can, if you're an actor putting it all on the screen, a director putting it all up there and leading the charge, a writer pouring their soul out onto the page, that is a real high wire act. First, it takes an enormous amount of expertise, and and second, it's like going to work without with showing your underwear. It's a scary thing. So I think I always approach people with that recognition and with that respect that, and also if they're in the room, they've earned the place to be in the room. So that's sort of number one. Number two, I think it's really important when I begin a creative conversation and a creative journey with someone, that we spend a lot of time talking about what the intention is. What are we trying to get at here? What movie do you want to make? What story do you want to tell? How do you want to tell it? I always find that over time I've learned that in those very early conversations, the filmmaker will most likely reveal what they want to do in that first conversation. It can morph and change and adapt a little bit, but not too much. And I think it's my responsibility and that of our studio to, not kind of enter into a creative relationship on a wing and a prayer, right? It's like, no, are we talking about the same movie? If you're making a Fast and Furious movie, do you understand the core tenets of a Fast and Furious movie and what get the fans excited? If you're coming on board to Jurassic, do you understand that, you've got to maintain that sense of awe when you see a dinosaur for the first time? So, it's just those kinds of things. But I also love creative people. I love working with them, and it makes me really happy. So it's my sort of, happy place.
Is there something that you wish more business-minded people knew about creatives or about working with creatives?
No, the further they stay away from them, usually the better.
Nice. All right. Now, that brings me to the second thing that you just mentioned about, if projects don't work out, right, and taking accountability. There's a flip side to that, which is risk, right? If you're always concerned about, it doesn't work, then you don't end up with a portfolio of new titles that, get people really excited. So can you talk a little bit about your taste-making process, your selection process, because I, like many other people, am in awe of some of Mamma Mia, right? Straight Outta Compton. Like, there's a whole bunch of titles that have come out of Universal that I don't know would have come out of any other studio. So can you talk a little bit about how you think about risk and storytelling and how you make those choices?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if it's because I was actually reflecting on this, knowing that we were going to be talking. I don't know if it's an accident that I cut my teeth. My early career was at New Line Cinema in the mid to late 90s, where we were working with Paul Thomas Anderson on Boogie Nights, Austin Powers, movies that were, really on the fringe but yet kind of got into the cultural zeitgeist. And then at Universal, we've created opportunity out of challenge because we're not Disney. We don't have the big IP. We created Fast and Furious from whole cloth. Jurassic's a little bit different, but we had to reboot Jurassic for Jurassic World and come up with brand new storylines. Jason Bourne, how many times can he lose his memories, but so we don't have canons and after canon of mythology and characters to pull from, right? So we have to sort of make a lot of things up. I do naturally gravitate towards things that are super commercial on the one hand, but maybe not so obvious. I like to look for the white space, right? When we made Girls Trip, which was a movie, that was very, very successful for us. When Will Packer, the producer, came in to pitch it, I bought it based on the pitch right then and there. I don't think he even got all the way through it. And I said, I know this is a movie. There's an audience for this movie. So some of it is just sort of recognizing, again, like where that white space is, looking for audience segments that haven't been, they just haven't been served at all. That was the same thing with Mamma Mia. Mamma Mia was hilarious because nobody thought that would work, and I thought it was so obvious because I love ABBA, and thank God it did work. And a little bit the same thing, Compton is an interesting one because that was a movie that had languished in development at another studio. That was in development when I was at New Line, ended up at Warner Brothers, and after I made Ride Along with Cube, we were just happening to be talking about it one day. And, to me, the opportunity for that movie was to actually treat it like a big studio movie. It was a big, epic, rags to riches story. It's a story of the American dream. It's a story of brotherhood. And there was a great sort of, social message underneath it, right? Which is, artists being told that they couldn't do something, that they couldn't express themselves, they couldn't express their experience. And all of those ingredients are, in fact, what made it so successful. So, I don't know. I don't really, the whole idea of sort of vision. I think I have a good nose for commercial ideas. I do recognize talent and talented people, and I like to look for that white space.
Okay. You mentioned this idea of finding an audience, and obviously there are tons of audiences that are being served now for the very first time, really. I mean, when you think about the Latin community, the Asian American community, the LGBT community, et cetera, feels like over the last 3 or 4 years, we're finally seeing representation. And obviously, this has always been a story when we talk about how women in general are depicted in entertainment and so on, and the opportunities to play lead roles and so on. Like, for you, do you have a feeling about how to reach those audiences, or do you just kind of know it when you see it?
Yeah, well, I mean, what's happening now actually in this space, which is really great. I mean, look, there's always room for more inclusion, more representation, as we saw this year with the Oscars and the lack of female representation, particularly with directors and actors. But there is more opportunity now because there's more content being created. And so those opportunities definitely exist. When, because I deal with the theatrical landscape, it's actually really interesting. We made a movie called Bros last year. Judd Apatow, it was a formula that has worked for us over and over again. You make Trainwreck, you put Amy Schumer, a messy woman, in the middle of it. It kind of works. Same with Bridesmaids. And the movie didn't connect. It didn't work. And it's not because it's a great movie and it really works. And we've done a lot of kind of soul searching ourselves, and also, just kind of anecdotal feedback and things like that. Why did that movie not connect? I have some theories about the way that we marketed it. I think we were a little too presumptuous that everybody wanted to show up for that movie. But I think also that kind of content can be found on streaming. So I think we felt that we were, creating a sort of a first, if you will. It wasn't really the first. I think, an audience who was interested in that story had already been pretty satisfied in streaming. So, I think we're all finding our way with it. But, eventually, gosh, wouldn't you love to just get to a point where we're not talking about, oh wow, isn't this amazing? It was a movie for women, or it was a movie for the African American experience. So it's just a movie, It's just a movie for whatever, subgenre it is.
Yeah, and I think
that's the goal.
and part of reaching that goal is around trying to make sure that, whether we're talking about creators or decision-making executives, that those rooms are also full of lots of different kinds of people as well.
That's right. That's a really good point. Absolutely. The leadership has to has to represent as well.
And I know that you have taken strides on your own and with the studio to try to make that happen. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, one of the things that occurred to me, and it was just really, I had the benefit of being inside a big organization. We changed parent company, and oftentimes when that happens, when, big sale happens, the new company comes in and they have to fulfill certain obligations because of the purchase around diversity, equity, and inclusion. When Comcast came in, very well intended, they had a number of quotas to fill. And I just looked at it and sort of said, this is, quite frankly, BS. This is not going to move the needle. So I got together with my HR partner, and we kind of brainstormed a little bit. And I give my boss, Jeff Shell, a ton of credit. I went to him with a 5-year plan. And I said, I think we have a real opportunity here, but it's going to cost money, and it's going to take time. And he just said yes. And so we actually founded the first ever diversity, equity, and inclusion department reporting to me. So normally it sort of lives somewhere down in the bowels of the company, but it reported to me. It was fully resourced to build a team, and it was really designed to do two things. One was to focus our attention on talent behind the camera, in front of the camera, and also to look at our culture, our internal culture, to make sure that we were recruiting, but we were also shifting the culture enough that we could retain. And I will tell you that it is ongoing work. We've been at it now for 6 years. Janine Jones-Clark runs that department. She is incredible. We also have a lot of support on the HR side. During the pandemic with, Black Lives Matter and, that moment of, real, kind of social justice reckoning, we redoubled our efforts. It's just, you have to sort of enter the work, I think, if you want to change the culture and then maintain it. It's just sort of everyday stuff. Just like you come in and you check you check your tracking for the movies and you check the box office returns. You've also got to check in on the culture.
Okay. And, with respect to how that work happened, you're reminding me again, when we talk about organizational leadership, is to be able to think systemically and organizationally. I think we, on the business school side, spend a lot of time talking about business from an analytical point of view. Kind of what are the inputs? How can we optimize? And less time about what are the systems in place to make sure that the thing that we want to have happen happens. Can you talk about some of that process of envisioning kind of reporting structure and some of the maybe potentially more mundane and boring stuff, but that is critical to make sure that the organization is actually set up for success?
Absolutely. And you're right. It is critical. Look, it sort of starts with a model, right? Everything that I do, even when I talk about the movies that I make, they have to adhere to a business plan. I always look at launching a film is like launching a small business, or launching a brand new product into the marketplace. Running an annual slate is sort of like running a portfolio. So everything has to have a rational business model around it. But very specifically inside the culture, just to talk about how we did it. We talked about the department, which sort of lives inside the company. We were able to find budget for it and have that supported. And then you have to go, okay, well, what's the ROI on that investment, right? Well, when it comes to the movies, if we can impact anything from being introduced to new talent who can end up having a relationship with the studio and then, be along with us for the ride, to creating the right kind of representation inside an animated movie, which is what happens because this team also looks at our content and makes sure that whether we're dealing with disability in the right way or, gender in the right way. That's also going to have an impact, right? All the way to attracting talent. Jordan Peele is with our company because we walk the walk. We have an amazing, he usually shoots his movies in LA, and he's actually shot the last 3 on the lot. And we have an incredible below the line trainee program. So that is taking diverse people and putting them in jobs, all around the production. And they've all gone on to, because they could have Jordan Peele on their resume. So again, that's helping us retain Jordan. We have a sustainability program. It costs money. That program helped us attract the Daniels to a 5-year deal with Universal. It was a really big piece of it. So you start to find that there's a kind of flywheel of activity that goes on around this. And it does, I would I'm speaking to business people. It took me a while to get there, but a little positive press goes a long way. And the senior leadership, all the way from Comcast to NBC, now call on us to create programs for them to go and give talks about the work that we're doing because it's had that much of an impact.
That's awesome. All right. So I see we're starting to run up on time. So
Sorry, I'm long-winded.
No. This is amazing. The theme today is Invent the Future. And so we've already had brilliant conversations. One of our instructors who just wrote a book on Web3 and NFT had a conversation about these emerging technologies and what they mean for creators and entertainers and so forth. Is there a trend, it doesn't necessarily have to be new tech, but is there a trend that you see that gets you really excited about the future of entertainment?
Yeah, well, there's a couple of things. I think you guys have all been talking about AI. AI is going to be, I think it's going to be one of those things that changes the way that we function in the world completely. It's going to have implications to the creative process. I hope that it's regulated before it's available to do that. I'm not really interested in taking writers out of the writing process and putting it through a chat bot, even though we can do it. I always like to ask myself the question, okay, we know we can do it, but should we do it? Right, so there's a moral and ethical and legal thing there. But I am excited about what that's going to do in terms of, some post-production processes and things like that. So that tech-enabled thing is really exciting to me. I'm also really excited about, just what's going on in the zeitgeist. You look at a movie like Everything Everywhere All at Once. That movie connected with a certain younger audience because they are filmmakers that have grown up with YouTube, with short form content. It was the first time I was seeing filmmakers that were really speaking to the experience of young people. I think we're going to see that more and more. So that's really exciting to me. You kind of, we're at a point in history, I think, where we've all collectively gone through this global pandemic experience. We're all feeling, a little bit the global apocalypse of the, environmental mess. Politics, obviously, that has an impact, and so I'm interested, of course, in how that impacts artists and how that impacts the kinds of movies and stories that we can make and tell. So I'm excited about that too. And then my business is in a challenging time, and it's sort of technology is moving at such a fast rate, and the business is changing. Where it's all going, I don't think we exactly know, but I wish we could zoom 15 years into the future because I think it's going to look so different. Storytelling is storytelling. Content is always going to be something we want to engage in. How we're doing it, where we're doing it, what we're going to be doing at the same time, how we're going to be engaging with it. I think we're on the frontier of something that's really exciting, and I think there's a lot of creative opportunity and also business opportunity.
Okay, so for the folks in the room, especially people who are in the early stages of their careers, you've had a very interesting career journey. are there any nuggets of wisdom that you would want to share about choices regarding how you approach a career in entertainment?
Well, first of all, I mean, again, we're talking to people who are focused in on business. I think the key. You did ask an interesting question about how do you introduce creatives to business people, and I was glib about it, but really, I think it's just about media and entertainment. There is just such a kind of an air of mystique around it. I always tell young people who want to get into the business, and particularly sort of in the area that I'm in, try and do whatever you can to demystify it. There are tangible jobs. It's a business. It has to be run as a business. I can sit here and wax poetic about, storytelling. At the end of the day, I gotta deliver, hundreds of millions of dollars to my corporate parents every year. So it is a business, and so really demystify it. Know that there are roles, there are tangible roles in there for you.
Okay. I think we have time for one question.
How do you pick? That's so Sophie's choice.
Hi, thank you. My name is Okera, Cornell MBA, right here.
Oh, hi.
Hi, how's it going? So my question to you is, you were talking about how you're always trying to find like fresh, new ideas to create content and for theatrical distribution. So my question to you is, do you get like any nuggets from like the zeitgeist in terms of what ideas would be like a captivating idea for a movie released like 2 years down the road or like 5 years down the road?
Yeah, 5 years might be a stretch with my crystal ball, but I draw from all kinds of things. I look at music, I look at trends in music, trends in design. I travel a lot with my job, and I love to do that because I love to just sort of plop into an environment and just look and see what's going on. I think one of the things I'm always fighting against is the kind of homogeny of being in an industry that talks about itself. You can be in a little bit of an echo chamber. So really busting outside of that. I listen to young people a lot. I think that, that's who we're making movies for mostly, and a global audience and a sort of younger audience. And so, just listening to, what's going on. I have the benefit of having teenagers, so they keep it very real for me. Trust me. So that's also very helpful. But yeah, I think it's just I learned this from Brian Grazer, the producer. He actually wrote a book about curiosity. But even before he wrote the book, it was always like a real tenet of his just to be curious. And he really instilled that in me. So I think just being curious about people and about the world and kind of what's going on. Yeah. But I also try not to follow trends too much. That's the other thing. It's like you got to kind of, try and zig where other people are zagging, in a very technical term.
Okay. Well, Donna, congratulations. Thank you so much for spending some time with us.
Thank you so much. Thanks, everybody.